One of our guest lecturers. He just moved here from San Diego, California with his wife Chloe. He has been serving as a college and young adult pastor for how many years now? 5 years, okay. And decided it was time to come home because we treat him much nicer here than they do in San Diego. And so he lives in the apartment connected to my house, yeah. So he's got the little white car that you've probably seen. And I've just asked him to come up and introduce himself. His name's Hudson, and he's going to talk. I want to ask him a few questions because he's been in a school just like this, and we were talking about it the other night, and he started sharing with me some things that he wished he would have thought about and done when he was sitting where you're sitting. So let's give it up for Hudson. And Chloe.
What's up, guys? What a crew. This is my wife, Chloe, by the way. I had to bring her up so you can all see her. She's wonderful. She's the better half of me. And if you have questions for me, ask her. She knows everything more than I do. We got married 3 years ago. It's been awesome. If you're thinking about marriage, I'd recommend it. We actually just got back from traveling Europe for a little bit over 2 months. We just decided before we moved here, we're like, you know what, might as well just spend all of our money. So I went to Europe and backpacked for 2 months, which was a lot of fun. And now we're here, living here. I was a pastor in San Diego as a young adults pastor for 5 years. Pastor at a church called All People's Church, part of the Antioch movement. I'm not sure if you've heard it all, but we do a lot of fun stuff, a lot of missions work. We have churches throughout all, I don't know how many nations now, like 20 nations, something like that. And so now I'm here, going to bother you guys. And so, I'm Hudson. Dad, what was the question you had?
Yeah, so he's going to be teaching the book of Acts, by the way. That's what he'll be teaching you. So we were talking about, like, when you were, so he went to college. He was born and raised here, but like a lot of kids here, when they're like your age, they go, this is the most boring place on earth. And, you know, I got to get off this little rock and see the world. And so tell us about where you went to school and what it was like, how it was similar or not similar to here.
Well, I decided that being born and raised on this beautiful paradise of an island, I decided I wanted to go to the complete opposite. And so I went to the middle of nowhere in England, Bible school called Cape and Ray. I lived in a castle. Yeah, it was freezing cold all the time. It rained, and it wasn't a good rain. You know, it was like the gray rain that made the ground soggy 24/7. And there's a lot of sheep out there. So that was a good time. But I learned a lot. And after that Bible school, I went to another one in Austria called Tauernhof, which is incredible. I recommend Austria highly. We were just there actually a couple weeks ago. But that's a great time. I learned so much there. Some of the things I was sharing with my dad here the other night was, if I could go back and do it again, I think, and this is going to be hard for you guys to do because you're so in your world, it's hard to be outside of your world. But back then I was just so in my world. I couldn't see this incredible opportunity that I had. I just kind of thought it was part of life because I hadn't done life yet. You know, I was 18 at the time, which many of you guys are. And I didn't realize, like, after this, you go and you work jobs and you don't do cool experiences for a whole year like this. Like we say, we traveled to Europe for 2 months, and people blow their minds. Like, if you guys say to people that you're living in Hawaii for a year, they're going to blow their minds because this is an unusual experience. This will never happen again in your life, more than likely. This is going to be one of the pinnacles of your life that you will tell your kids about when you're older. And it's hard for you to see that now because this is really unique. You haven't had much experience past this. And so if I could go back, I would kick myself and say, this is a really unique experience you're having in England and Austria, learning the Bible from people who want to teach you the Bible. This is not going to happen again in your life ever. So you really should get out of your own way and take advantage of this. And so some of the things that I did that I regret is that, you know, we had these awesome lecturers come from subjects. They had such deep knowledge. And during meal times, you're allowed to sit with them and talk with them and ask them about who they are, where they're coming from, how they learn, what does this mean, what do you mean by that. You're allowed to do that. I didn't do that because I just want to have fun with my friends. I was just in my world. I was like, oh yeah, it's meal time. It's hang out, socialize with my friends time. And we just go and who knows what we did, you know? I don't even remember because it was insignificant. I was just being a kid and I regret doing that. I wish I'd spent more time with these speakers and asking them questions and gaining knowledge. We had such a rich library of books, and of course these days we have the internet, which I guess we had the internet somewhat back then, but we're not in a castle. But there was such a deep wellspring of, oh, these are the resources that are available to me during this time, right? And I wish that I had done that. I wish that I'd spent more time in the library, learning more, asking my professors, what does this mean that I just stumbled upon? You know, what's a good book that you'd recommend for me, right? I wish that I had asked someone, specific someone, to mentor me, like specifically one-on-one mentoring, because you guys are going to have a lot of mentors coming in and out of this place. You're going to learn a lot. You're going to have a lot of questions, and it's so important to have someone speak into your life. You can say, I'm struggling with this. I'm curious about this, who you've asked to mentor you specifically. And lastly, I wish that I took more advantage of the location that I was at. I remember in Towernhoff, again, I just want to hang out with my friends. Whatever they were doing, I was like, okay, we can do that. Oftentimes, they just want to sit around in school and who knows what we did. But I wish that I I don't know, went out and bought a bike and rode up a mountain, did more adventuring around the area. Because this place is unique. This place is awesome. And you guys are going to have people taking you around, which is going to be a lot of fun. But soak it up, enjoy every second of it. But don't forget that this is a very unique time in your life. And get out of your own way. Don't just hang out with your friends and think that this is a cool one-year excursion. This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity that you guys get to have. It's really exciting.
Thank you, Hudson.
Great, cool.
Is your hair as long as hers?
My hair is long as yours.
Oh, let's
We're
see.
seeing.
Put it in the back. It's close.
We're working on it.
The biggest mistaken is
We call him Fabio. You know who Fabio is?
You're not allowed to call me that. Yeah, hi guys. Good to meet you all.
And he'll be a resource to you guys since he lives right on campus and stuff. And you can grab him and Chloe and just connect with them. So they're here for you guys. All right. So this is going to be a little bit different lecture because this is both a lecture and my story, kind of combined in one. Okay. And this is designed. I'm going to be teaching you a book of Philemon. We'll be doing 1st and 2nd Timothy in the church. We'll be doing a bunch of other stuff that I'll be teaching in the future. But this is sort of an intro into your future and how to become a successful adult. These are tips. We can't force this into anybody, but these are tips. And it's also, as Hudson sort of teed off with, is how to have a successful year, how to make sure that it's a successful year for you. So this is the bad news first. You are not truly an adult, no matter how old you are, until you're self-supporting. That's why a lot of you girls, if down the road you meet some guy, and he's handsome, built well, got the whole flair, but he lives in the basement and plays games all day of his mom's house. The thing that's going to drive you nuts is that he's not an adult yet. Because in the end, we all know the story that every woman in her right mind is looking for a man who can support her and any kids that might come along, okay, and will provide and protect. And the role of every real man, and this is how we men judge men, is by their ability to provide and protect. So when you get a bunch of guys who are just toads in the basement, guys look down on them. Women look down on them, right? And so you're not really an adult until you're actually able to provide for yourself. And by the way, that comes sooner for some people than others. And I realize some people need to rely on their parents to get all the way through school. My wife had to do that. She went to med school. She was on her parents' dime. She didn't have any money to pay for dental school. But she was then beholding to them because they were paying for her room, paying for her food, paying for her tuition, right? And I'm not saying that's a bad thing, but a lot of times we put on the mantle, well, I'm an adult. And real adults look at people like that and go, nah, not yet. You're not, you're part way. You're part way. I was raised in a house near 1 mile from the ocean in a place called Pacific Beach in San Diego, California. And my parents had both joined the military during World War II. Shows you how old I am. My mom was in the Navy, and my dad was in the Army, and they got stationed in San Diego. They're both from the Midwest. My dad's from Ohio, my mom's from South Dakota. And when they got to San Diego, they looked around and they said, we like the winters here, we're not going back. And they met each other, they got married. I was the firstborn of the family in this small little Spanish-style bungalow in Pacific Beach. And my parents were typical parents of the 50s. In the 50s, pretty much everybody except a total derelict, you checked into church for an hour because it was the social thing to do. Some people, of course, did it because they really had a relationship with God. Other people just did it because they didn't want their wife nagging them, or it was the thing that they did socially. My dad was the guy who didn't really want his wife nagging him, so he went to church for a while. But by the time I was about 12 or 13, he was pretty much done with it, and he was spending his Sundays in the garage, which is exactly where I wanted to spend it. Or when I started surfing at about that age, I wanted my Sundays to be at the beach. And so I started giving my mom a real hard time about going to church because there was really nothing there for me. They had a Mickey Mouse little Sunday school class of a bunch of bored kids with a teacher that had been drafted who didn't really understand kids. And you just kind of had to clock in your hour, and then you can get the heck out of there and go do what you want, right? Well, my parents, my dad drifted into alcoholism, and it got really weird towards that age. You never knew what was coming through the door, whether it was happy dad giving away money or angry dad throwing stuff around. And so finally my parents divorced. And when that happened, I was the oldest of 5 kids. 3 of my sisters are adopted, different ethnicities. One's 100% American Indian, one is Mexican, and one is Hawaiian Filipino, who ironically, we didn't find out till my mom passed away, that her birth mother actually lives right up the road, or her family lives right up the road. Birth mother's passed away. So I was in this family of 5 kids. My mom didn't work because she had all these kids to support. And so I'm 15 years old, just about to turn 16, and she comes up to me and she goes, Rick, we can't afford you anymore. I'm thinking, oh, great, they're going to sell me? I'm not going to get much for that. But she goes, if you want anything in this world, you're going to have to go out and get a full-time job. Now, keep in mind, I'm in high school. I'm about to enter 11th grade. And now I'm being told that I have to work a 40-hour week like an adult in order to provide anything for me and then not be a burden on the family and help where I can in the family. And so I would go to school at 7 in the morning. I got an early class. I'd be out of school at noon. I'd hop on my bike and I'd ride 3 miles to where my job was, which started at 1. And then I would work till 10 at night and come home, grab something to eat, fall asleep, get up and do it, recycle again for the next 2 years, okay? So by the time I was in college, I had been squirreling away enough money because I was supporting myself, I was buying all my own clothes, anything I wanted, I had to buy it myself. And so by the time I was your age, I was getting close to your age, and I wanted to go to college, I had some money saved in the bank that I could afford 1 semester of a school just like this. And I went to a school where it's exactly the same school as my son was talking about, in a castle in England, okay? And I could only afford 1 semester. But I didn't realize that I would run out of, I thought I might have some extra cash, because I'd saved up a little bit, but it went pretty fast. And so I could only go 1 semester, and I never thought to tell anybody, Because I was raised in the kind of household that you don't tell anybody if you're having financial issues. You just go out and try to find more work to do or whatever. And wasn't able to do that in England. So I could only go one semester, and then I had to go home because I had a round-trip ticket, and I didn't have the funds to pay for the second semester. Now, sitting here now, I wish I would have actually told somebody in my church that was going on, not to make them feel sorry, but because, like here, if somebody heard that, there'd be people lining up to help one of you make it to the second semester. So if you're in my boat, by any chance, you let us know. Not because you're trying to beg, but because there's people that have funds and are looking for somebody to invest in. All right? So back to this idea of what it is to be an adult. Until you leave home and until you're an adult and you can leave home and carry your own weight, you're not really an adult. And I suggest you do that as soon as possible. Okay? Within reason. If you're trying for a goal or something, but don't just hang around the house because you get a free ride. All right? Time to step up, start to be that person that God's created you to be. Right? And I say that from a guy who much younger than you was already living adult, making adult decisions in my life because I had to. Right? Here's another one. It kind of relates to this one. Life's not fair. Now, it never struck me as a 15-year-old having to go to work 40 hours a week when all my other friends are out running around, surfing all the time and after school and going to parties and doing all this stuff secular guys were doing. Never struck me that life wasn't fair. But when my kids were raised up, they would come up to me and go, I make a decision, you got to do this. They go, that's not fair. And I go, guess what? Life's not fair. And they can pretty much repeat that as a mantra now. But life isn't fair. Some of you have an amazing amount of talents, skills, abilities. Some of you come from backgrounds where you have full 100% support of your parents. They're your cheerleaders. You've had a terrific family life. You think back and you see one happy moment after another happy moment. Some of you, your background is something you'd never want to wish on anybody else. And it's not your fault. Life is just not fair. Everybody gets a different hand. And in the end, it's what you're going to do with those things that you're given. And by the way, some of those things that are miserable in your life right now are actually going to turn out in some way to be something that makes you into a person that will be far more able to handle the world than somebody who just had it all given to them. It'll make you a better husband, make you a better wife. It'll make you a better student. It'll make you a better worker. It'll make you a better Christian in many ways, to having come from a background where you've had it rough. Because life isn't fair, and you ought not to expect it to be. And so, for my story, I was just a guy who just wanted to run and go surf every chance I got, and didn't want to have nothing to do with church. My mom was starting to panic. So, oh man! And she heard about this church that had a really wild and crazy youth pastor that she thought might be interesting, and so she tried to force me to go. I didn't want to go. And then I forget what she bribed me with. She bribed me with something. Just go try it once. Go try it once. And so, you know how I went to church? I walked into church like this. Really, really desiring to pull in. I'm just doing this because I have to this one Sunday. Then I can tell her it sucks and I don't have to go again. And I walk in to this room, and it was about this many high school kids. And this really attractive girl comes up to me and goes, "Are you new here?" "Yeah." She goes, "Are you coming back next week? Are you going to be here?" "Yeah." "Yes, I am." And then the guy says, "Hey, I'm organizing a surf trip to Mexico." Now, this guy didn't surf, okay? You're from Rosarito Beach, right? Okay. You know where K38 is? K38? Yeah. The surf spot K38. It's just south of you a little bit. So he's organized a surf trip. He's going to take 6 of us down in his Volkswagen van, and we're going to camp out. And this guy couldn't even swim, but he was going to stay on top of the cliff and film movies of all of us surfing. Now, I had an ego about that big when it came to surfing. And now there's hot chicks, and a guy that's going to take me to go surfing. How do I come back to this place again? And he did. And so I went to church for all the wrong reasons, okay? For fun, for girls. But an interesting thing happened. Little pieces of the message would get through because the guy was very clever, very funny, and knew how to explain the gospel to people that were total idiots. And bit by bit, I began to what I call go spin around the drain, you know? And slowly I got closer to that drain hole called Christianity, where you're going to go down the pipe and you're going to be all in and you ain't coming back. But it took me till almost my late part of my 10th grade year to actually make that decision. So I was spinning around it for about a year and a half or so until I finally go, I had a lot of questions that nobody could answer. And when people started being able to answer them, it made me move closer and closer to Christianity. I ran out of excuses. Basically, I ran out of excuses why I shouldn't be a Christian. And the weight of evidence was so strong for being a Christian that I said, okay, I'm in. And I knew to go in, though, I knew if I was going to go in, I would have to go in all the way, right? And so that was my experience. I stepped into being a Christian. My junior and senior year, I was a Christian in high school, and telling all my friends who weren't Christians about Christ, deciding I wanted to go study the Bible some more, which is how I ended up in England, and just kind of jumping into the youth group and helping everywhere I could. I helped with little kids. I helped with junior hires. I helped anywhere I could. And I sort of found I had sort of a natural inclination towards working with young people. So when I came back from Bible college, I started apprenticing under the guy that had led me to Christ. Was his apprentice for a couple years. And our youth group, by the way, started off with maybe 20, 30 guys. And within about 4 weeks, we had 200 high school kids. You probably heard of the Jesus movement, maybe even saw that I was right dead center in all of that. We didn't know any of that was going on in LA, but it was happening in San Diego. And by the time I came back from college and jumped in to be apprentice, on Wednesday nights we'd have about 800 high school kids, and I was running with 200 junior high school kids in another building. And these were mostly from non-Christian backgrounds. So, but they weren't paying me anything. And this is where we come to the next little slide. Expect disappointments. Because in the end, you can't control what others might do to you. The only thing you really have control of is what you do to others. And in the Christian life, there is no shortage of disappointments because you're working with people. You're working with broken people. And some of the people you think that you can depend on, that you put all your chips on, they will disappoint you. And it's no sense in getting out the violin and having misery for the rest of your life, because the only thing that you can do is what you do. You can't force somebody to do the right thing. So I'm moving into my late teens, and I'm dating a girl. We dated for 3 years. And we got married. And we had 2 kids. And I got hired into my first church outside my home church. And I started with 11, I was a junior high youth guy, and I had 11 kids in my youth group. A year and a half later, I had 150, okay? And I was drowning in kids. And then we went even more than that later on. I was drowning in kids, and the church I was working for, they decided that that the junior high stuff was too crazy for them. So they started making it really hard for me to transfer kids to a high school program. And so I was dumping 100 kids sometimes a year into just a vacuum, because they wouldn't let me be a high school guy too. I had to stay junior high. They said, you're too radical for high school. And then they put a guy in high school who was just a volunteer, and he didn't know how to relate to the kids that were coming to Christ, because most of them were coming from non-Christian backgrounds, talking about effing great Jesus was and stuff like that. And so we were losing all those kids. And there were guys on the board who were voting to get rid of me. Every time we had a board meeting, there'd be a couple guys, I vote we get rid of the junior high guy. What did I do? But they weren't used to that. In fact, I had kind of long hair, more than kind of long hair, a little more like my son. And I remember going to church one day, and there's a guy handing out cards at the door. And he sees me, he smiles, and he hands me a card. It's a little business card. I looked down on it. There's a verse out of 1 Corinthians about how long hair on a man is shameful. I felt so loved, you know, and so disappointed because all these kids were coming to Christ, and the church didn't care. They just didn't care. They had their own context, their own agenda, their own idea. And I thought about leaving youth ministry, and then that church fell apart. The pastor left, and da-da-da-da-da. Ended up me and the janitor, and then a church invited me to come and be their youth pastor, which was a terrific experience. And I did that for 6 years until I moved to Ventura, California, to work for a Christian publishing company because I've been doing a bunch of real creative stuff with youth ministry. And I moved up there to help write curriculum and things like that to help other youth guys do stuff. And I lived on we bought our first house. We had 2 kids. And then I came home from work one day and my wife says, I need to talk to you about something. Now remember, we were teenage sweethearts, been married 12 years now. What? She looked really serious. She goes, look, you've been a good husband. We've had a good family. But I don't want it anymore. What did you just say? I don't want it anymore. I don't want to be a Christian. I don't want to be married. I don't want to have kids in my life. Well, what is it you want? I mean, that's, in my mind, I'm thinking, that's what everybody wants. I'm sure that's what most of you want. And she had it. The kids were in grade school. They were great kids. You'll meet some of them. And she goes, I want to be 18 again. Well, you can't do that. And she goes, I can try. And she packed her stuff up. That was it. Okay. Now, my whole world came caving in because I'm a single dad, raising 2 little boys by myself and trying to work. And I got this weird thing going on, you know. And it was disappointing would even not be a very good word for it. It was like tragic. And at the time I'm going, this is not supposed to happen. We were both Christians. We dated for 3 years. I went all down the list, checking all the boxes, you know. I never saw this coming. And that's what I'm saying. You can only control what you do. And she went on and split, and I packed up the kids, and we moved over here. And so I moved over here as a single dad, raising 2 little boys by myself as a freelance writer and illustrator. Okay? So background 10 years in youth ministry, another 6 years working, developing curriculum, and now I'm over here, raising 2 little boys and kind of going, okay, what's going to happen next? By the way, after 4 years, after I was single for 4 years, I met my wife, Lauren, who had just come back from dental school, which was, by the way, a really interesting thing because there were no available girls on this island unless you wanted to find some girl with 5 kids by 5 different guys, you know, who was looking for a husband. I'm going, yeah, I got enough problems of my own right here. And suddenly, everywhere I'm hearing about this cute Japanese girl who's just come back from dental school, and she's really religious like you are, you know, that kind of thing. And by that time, I'd been hired by a church here up the road that needed a youth guy. So I was doing youth ministry, and I started writing and illustrating when I met my wife, Lauren, who you will meet, okay? But my point of this is that you can be doing it all right. And I don't mean perfect, because there is no perfect. There's no perfect husband, no perfect wife, you know. But you can be checking most of the boxes, and disappointments will happen. You can throw your trust entirely on people you think will never disappoint you, and then they do. And your only thing you can control is what you do to other people, right? So what I'm trying to do is pop the happily ever after bubble, because it's not always the case. And some of you have already experienced that bubble being popped in your life, even at your age. And I'm not trying to get you freaked out about what the future is, but you don't know what the future is. The good part about this is that God has a whole plan. He knows all about it. He's got it all figured out. And he ain't going to let you hang. We'll get to that in a minute. But here's another one to know. Your sins will find you out. God will forgive you, but he won't deliver you from the consequences of your actions. So Never think you can just take a vacation and run amok. Never think, oh, well, I'm just going to go in this direction for now. Your sins ultimately will find you out. They'll come back and haunt you. And I know that from counseling people that are counseling women that got an abortion, 20 years ago, that still, on the date they were supposed to have given birth, just go to pieces, and they can't tell anybody, okay? Or guys who just wish they could go have a redo on some area of their life where they ripped somebody off or did some, just junk thing to somebody. And our sins will find us out. We will always pay a penalty for them. You can be forgiven for them. God will not make you pay the penalty eternally, but you may have to pay the penalty on earth. Okay? So the moral of that is run from temptation. Don't even go near it. It's like, it's a mousetrap. Okay? And by the way, God defines success, not you. So don't be suckered by the world. The world doesn't define success. If you start chasing after the things that the culture says are important, you'll leave empty-handed. And I know that firsthand because for some reason that I can't figure it out, God decided to throw me into being able to live out my highest dreams in high school. In high school, sitting right in a desk kind of like what you're at right now, I was learning to draw cartoons. I was actually a pretty good cartoonist. And I wanted to go draw cartoons professionally. And in particular, there was one of two magazines I wanted to work for. Either Mad Magazine, which some of you may have seen, or a magazine that doesn't exist anymore called Surfer Magazine. And Surfer Magazine had a two-page comic strip in it. And where I lived, that was the most frequently stolen magazine out of high school libraries, right? And I realize they don't make magazines much anymore, but in these days, they had a pass-on readership that was like 100 times. If you bought it, it would go to 100 different people looking at the magazine. And so that was, to me, the high point of success and career success was to be able to work for Surfer Magazine. And in 1980, I bumped into a guy from Surfer Magazine and mentioned that, because at one time it had cartoons in it, and they hadn't had for a number of years. He goes, you guys ought to start doing cartoons, you guys. He goes, yeah, I think they're actually talking about it in editorial. And he knew I was a cartoonist. He goes, you want to submit something? I go, sure. And we got the job. So from 1980 to when I moved over here, I was also employed by Surfer Magazine, and I was living my dream, okay? Living my dream. We created this little comic strip called Mater and the Rat. And then I got the opportunity to write a book. It wasn't much of a book. It was a daily devotional. But because I was working in a publishing company, they said, hey, why don't you take a crack at this book? And I realized something that had happened from the time I was in high school to the time I started writing the book, that there's this thing called Microsoft Word. And I used to run, I would write for you had to write longhand or type out your papers when I was a kid, and you turn them in. I would always get an A over an F. Now, I don't know how your schools judge people, but you know what the A is for? The top one is A, and there's a slash and F. Top one is concept, idea, right? The bottom one is mechanics, which means your spelling, your punctuation, and stuff like that. I would always get A over F because they liked my ideas, but I couldn't spell worth a darn, And my punctuation was all over the board, run-on sentences, all that kind of stuff. Well, guess who helped me out? Microsoft Word, because they had little red lines. You're misspelled, and finally Microsoft Word just started correcting it for me. Woohoo, And all of a sudden I could write, and I wasn't sweating. Still had an editor to clean up some stuff, but I could write and actually have it readable, right? And I started writing books. The other day before school started, I decided to clean out my office this summer, and I opened up the cupboard that's got all the books that I've written. I counted them up, 41 books, okay? And that's a lot for any author to write. And one of them, the one you guys all know of, Soul Surfer, became a New York Times bestseller twice. Now, if you're a writer, if you're an actor in Hollywood, what's the highest thing you can earn, the highest award? Academy Award, Oscar, right? In the writing world, the highest award you can get is a New York Times bestseller. Every writer is dying to get New York Times bestseller, their name on New York Times bestseller. And that book did it for me twice. Okay? So now I am living the dream that every writer has. I've lived the dream that I had as a cartoonist as a kid. And here's what's really interesting. About the fourth or fifth book that I wrote, I remember going to the post office in Lawai, my post office in Lawai, and opening up the mailbox, and I see it come out. Oh, HarperCollins, it's got the publisher's name on it. I go, that must be advanced copy, because they send you advanced copies of your book. And I took the advanced copy and I threw it in the back seat. And I forgot about it. We were just sitting there in the back seat. I drove around for a couple of days and I said, what's on the back seat? Oh, that's the new book. Now, the first book I wrote, I was, could hardly wait. I got all the copies and passed it out to all my family. Oh, look, I wrote a book. Woo, I wrote a book. By the time I had 4 or 5, 6 under my belt, it lost its magic. I was still appreciative of it, but the thrill was gone. That thrill when you win the award and the trophy and your song goes #1, all those kind of things. Woo! But it goes away. Success as the world defines it is a joke. And I've met many. One of you guys is driving, or one of our RAs is driving a car that a lot of your parents, he was a lead singer in a band called Ambrosia, that if you asked your parents about it, they go, yeah, we made out to that band. Okay? They had all kinds of #1 songs, Ambrosia, Deeper Part of Me, and stuff like that. And that's his car. Okay? And if I asked him what his highest point of his career was in his life, what was the most important thing in his life, he would never say it was getting #1 songs. He would say what I would say. That it's the privilege of being able to connect somebody to Jesus in some way, where you help the lights come on in their understanding of who God is, where you're an intersection for something God's trying to do, where it's somehow or another he takes a really crappy human being and plugs him into himself and allows them to be a conduit to somebody who needs him. That is the definition of success, is to be in the hands, the feet, the mouth of Jesus. And you set your goals for anything else, you probably won't get them there. You may not, probably not get the Porsche. You're probably not going to get the mansion on the beach. You probably, but you might. You might be a New York Times bestseller too. And I'm telling you this as somebody who's actually got the golden ring twice. That the golden ring is a joke. Not that I don't appreciate the opportunity to do that and the influence that it's had. But if you were to ask me what the most important thing in my life has been, it goes back to I was able to be an intersection, that God used me some way to connect somebody to him. That's success. That's success. Now that might be being a mom who helps lead your kids to Christ. Might be a dad who shows your boys what a real man of God is. How valuable is that? It might be something in the community that God's given you. It may be a gift. Maybe a song you write, you die, you don't realize that somebody dug it up later on and they started singing a great song. And people in the future are going to be singing a worship song that you led that you never knew about. But that's what success is. So don't let the world con you into what success is. And it wants to. It wants you to waste your time chasing stuff that doesn't matter. Yeah. Oh, okay, just stretching. Okay. Here's a simple one too. Stay out of debt. Now, the definition of debt is when what you owe outweighs the cash value of what you have. All right? So what you owe, if you buy a car and you can't turn around and sell it for what you owe on it, you're in debt. All right? So stay out of debt. Drive a beater till you can afford to be able to pay for something and not be in debt. Or buy something that's used rather than something that's new. Something that's new always smells better, but you're wasting a lot of money if you can't really afford it. Okay? And Proverbs, they're pretty good on this. The rich rule over the poor, and the borrower is a slave to the lender. So part of adulting is stay out of debt. Now, you have to be wise on this kind of stuff, but it's part of the wisdom that I hope you'll gather here. And we're going to have some financial people come talk to you about using your money in a godly way, and they're going to be super helpful. So to dial into those guys, particularly you guys, because you're the breadwinner part is going to be on your shoulders. And people are going to be looking to you to be providers for their family and not taking them into debt that crashes your family down, okay? So your future is going to be defined by these things, really simple things. Spiritual insight, knowledge, experience, and friends, okay? Spiritual insight, knowledge, experience, and friends. Now, spiritual insight is what we're hoping that you'll gather from here, as well as knowledge and experience and making friends. So you see, these are all part of the bucket that you're living in right now. People without spiritual insight, people who can't think well, okay, who can't think well, end up making a mess out of their lives, making a mess out of their cultures, making a mess out of their families. And so, along with those things, there are a few other little things that your future will be determined by and defined by. Your perspective, your ability to look ahead and have an objective view. An objective view is you're thinking outside the box. You look at all the different angles and the different corners, okay? You can look back and see what others have done. How'd that work for them, right? So before you just charge into a new idea, you stop and you start thinking, looking at all the different corners, and you look at it really objectively. You look at it from all the different angles, rather than just buy what somebody says, right? It looks into the mirror and we observe ourselves. Do I have the skill level, the ability to do this? You know, is this part of my personality that this will work? So these kinds of things are what give you perspective on the situations that are coming in your life. And then discernment, wisdom. And that's the one thing, by the way, the world has a lot of smart people, but it doesn't have a lot of wise people. Where's wisdom come from? Yeah, one place, God. It only comes from God. And it means stopping and looking at things from all kinds of different angles. And I'll add this to it too, and you'll hear me rant about this down the road. But it learns how to say why. Why do we do that? So let me run some things by you. Why do we only sing 4 songs during worship? Why is a sermon 30 minutes to 45 minutes? Why? Any idea why? Ever thought about why? You know, why? What kind of youth ministry should we have? Why do we go after kids who are outside the church? Why not just work with the kids inside the church? You know, why do we do what we do? And you start asking those questions, and what that means is you're picking up the concept and you're looking at it from all kinds of different angles. And by the way, most church people don't know why they do what they do. They just go to church and it's done to them, and then they go and repeat what's being done to them, right? And we want to be people that are looking at things from all kinds of different angles and maybe rethinking why we do what we do. So, for example, this is a question for you. Why don't we pass an offering plate? Take a stab, take a guess. Why don't we pass an offering plate? Okay, that may be a good one. You put 20 bucks in, your neighbor puts 10, he feels weird, right? Or doesn't have anything, passes it. That could be a good reason. Any other reasons?
To make the opportunity to give.
Okay, but a plate would do that, yeah? Okay.
I remember you guys talking about this in the beginning, something like a long time ago, when they would pass around the offering plate, you would give like a lot, like you have to give a lot to the church, and you guys don't want to make it be like you have to.
Okay, so it's not something you feel pressure to have to give? Yeah. Huh? It's not what?
The focus.
Okay, it's not the focus. Okay.
If it's not like right in front of you, then you have to make the personal decision
Okay, so it purifies the giving a little bit, right? Rather than, oh, well, I better put something in because there's people around me, that kind of thing. Yeah.
Intention.
Huh?
Intention.
Okay, intention. There's another reason too. It doesn't work very well. You know why? You know how people give now to the church? Give it online. Because we used to pass the offering plate like every church does. You know, you got to fund somewhere. You know, people are asking, where do I give? And, okay, well, I guess we'll pass an offering plate. And then we asked, so with all the technology coming in, why are we passing an offering plate? Let's do an experiment. Let's give ways to give online. And then you have the privacy, right? There's no pressure. You can or you don't have to. And you know what we found when we measured our giving on Sunday? When there's some people that count the offering and say, okay, this Sunday we got X amount of money. What they found is when we went to not passing an offering plate, but just throwing a slide up there that shows how you can just give online if you want, our giving went whoosh. And the guys go, why did that happen? Why do you think it happened?
Partly probably privacy and probably people aren't carrying around cash. It's all in there.
Yeah, it's part like that. It's part of that. But here's what the interesting thing is. What we discovered is that people, when there's offering plate passed, it's pay per view. People will give when they're in church. If they don't come that Sunday, it's not like they give twice as much the next time they come. Okay? And there's only a small fraction of people that are disciplined enough to give a certain amount every month. Only a small fraction of people will actually physically give that amount. But we found that when we went to online giving, people would write in, how much do you want to give a month? There'd be a question, how much do you want to give a month? And they'd fill it in. And that money would come out of their bank account whether they were in church or not. Right? And so the differentiation between what we got when we used to pass the plate and when we went online was simply because people made a commitment to give in the privacy of their own home, looking at their own budgets, and said, we can afford this, and we'll commit to this. And they just let the bank do it because human nature was sloppy. It wasn't that their hearts were bad, it's just human nature was sloppy. And when we started asking the why questions, we were going, whoa, that really makes sense, really makes sense. And so we made some alterations because we started asking why questions. And I'm using that as an example because we ought to be doing that about all kinds of other things that we're doing in the church, in our lives, all that kind of stuff. So it's looking ahead with an objective view, looking back, looking into the mirror, and observing, all right? Also, it's discernment. That's wisdom, like I said. Understanding insight in how people work. And especially wisdom comes from Scripture. And then how we express ourselves in our integrity, in our speech, in our behavior, in our attitude, in our decisions, our reflections, and our production. In all those things, those are things that pour out of us. And so if we are people that in our expression have a certain kind of integrity, people can go to the bank on us. The guy that led me to the Lord, it was a really interesting thing. Now, I'm not a Christian kid, and he says, hey, I'd like to take you out for dinner, get to know you better. So I said, okay. He goes, I'll be there at 6. All right, so I'm waiting, and all of a sudden, it was literally 6 o'clock, right straight up, and his car pulls up. Whoa, because I was used to, maybe you guys, somebody said, I'll be there at 6, and it's 10 after, 15 after, or oops, I forgot, I'll be there soon. This guy was 6, and I go, wow, you were exactly on time. Now, I don't know if he was waiting up the road till the clock hit 6 and he drove down, but he said to me, he goes, you know what? I've found that being a man of my word is really important, and if I say 6, I'm going to be there at 6. I'm 15 years old, and 14, 15 years old, and I'm going, oh, that's what a man does. That's what a man does. And so I made a real point, and even to this day, to be on time is a mark of integrity, right? that if I say I'm going to be there at 6, I'll be there at 6. And so it's learning those kinds of things that how we express our faith out, how it works out through us. One of the houses that I built on my property, the big barn, the construction guy and I, this is how we built the thing. He said, how much is it going to be? And he goes, it's going to be this much money. And I go, okay, I agree to pay that. And this is how we signed our agreement, like that. That was it. We shook hands. If you ever buy a house and they're going to build a house for you, you're going to go through 20 sheets of paper, signing stuff like that. The integrity part is when you have a reputation for integrity, as the builder did and as I did, we were able to shake hands and build the house for exactly the price. He got it paid, and he didn't charge me any more than what we agreed. Right? That goes a long way, man. That kind of stuff, if you're a person of integrity, the word gets around. In business, in life relationships, it really gets around. Okay? So all this kind of stuff and how we approach stuff. You ever meet people who the glass is half full all the time? You know, oh man, we're not going to make it. And do you ever meet people that are the other way around? The glass is always, I'm sorry, that's the glass half empty. Oh, we're never going to make it. Then you have the glass is half full. Yeah, it's going to be fine. We got enough, you know. Who would you rather hang around with? I mean, we all know. We'd much rather be hanging around somebody who's buoyant, who's going, well, we'll figure out another way to do it. You're going to meet a gal who's that way. She's going to be speaking in just a few minutes. Her name's Jungle Jen, and I've never seen anybody for whom so much can go wrong, and she can still be going, okay, well, we'll go to plan B. Oh, we've already done plan B. C, where are we now? We're plan E. Well, we'll go to plan E, you know, whereas most of you are already going like that. But you get as you'll see, she's wild, and she's a missionary, has ministry in the Amazon. But what makes it run for her is that, you know, she's not just going to curl up in a ball in a corner and just blubber because it didn't work the first time or somebody disappointed her. She's going to figure out a way to go. It's her attitude. She carries her attitude with it, and then it affects everybody. Just like, you ever been around people when they start complaining, then everybody else complains, right? Oh, this food. Oh, yeah, pretty soon everybody's complaining about it. The only thing you're allowed to do that on is politics, because it all sucks. But you're around people and their whole attitude's upbeat, and it drags you right along with them. You know, the buoyancy, it comes with that. Okay. And then last self-control, the ability to control our urges and our desires, you know. The ability to be able to say no to ourselves, the self-discipline that it takes, and it's a muscle. Self-discipline is a muscle, whether it's a muscle to push away from the table, to turn off the screen when that thing flashes by that you know you shouldn't be seeing, but you are seeing. To go, nope, I'm not going there. That's the worm on that hook is not going to take me, and you slide right on by that. All those little temptations that want to come at us and want to grab us and force us into another zone. If we have the self-control and the self-discipline to push away our urges, we'll go a long, long way in the adulting of our lives. Because nobody wants to be married to somebody who has no self-control. You know, just loses it all the time. Nobody wants to be married or have a relationship with somebody or work with somebody who can't control their mouth, who just, you know, can't control their emotions. And so, but those are things that we develop. And those are things that we work on. Those are skills that we put in practice. And we even get accountability. We say to somebody, listen, if you see me talking too much, just do this. Okay, you know? If I'm just blah, 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 nobody else can get a word in edgewise, just do this. And they're helping you develop those skills and those arts. Okay? So, again, this is kind of short and a little bit of the story of my life. I'm going to end just real briefly telling you a little bit about Quiet Christian Fellowship. I told some of you about this already. But that church I was with as a youth guy, I had already seen youth ministries blow up real big because I kind of knew how to go after kids who were like I was. That's basically what it was. I understood how those guys thought. So I got really cute girls and we went surfing. No, just kidding. So I understood how those guys thought. And so I started chasing down kids. I started with junior hires because nobody likes junior hires. I don't know if you realize that. Junior hires are the toadies of the world. Nobody cares about them. Their parents don't want them. You know, their older brothers, sisters don't want them. Teachers don't like them. I mean, but they're really easy to get, and they're like lemmings. If one goes off a cliff, all the rest of them go too. And so I figured, hey, these guys are easy to get. If I do wild and crazy stuff, like last night as Edge, some of you guys were at Edge, right? If we do wild and crazy stuff, I'm going to attract junior high kids. So I went to this church because they had gone through 2 youth guys in 6 months. They'd moved them all over, their families and everything. They moved them to Hawaii. And one of the wives just flipped out. And she was here 2 weeks. She goes, I can't take it. Ah! And she got on the plane and flew back home. So her husband had to go back and follow her. It was just too much of a culture shock for her. The other guy, nothing was happening. He wasn't able to pull it off. He didn't understand the culture. He was from the Midwest, which no offense, but I was from Southern California, so at least I knew the surf culture pretty well. And this guy had no idea about anything, and he just sort of threw in the towel. And so they hired me. And I didn't really need the job because I was a freelance writer and illustrator still, doing a lot of that stuff. But I said, but I like working with youth, and sure, you have a need, I'll jump in there. But I made him a contract, and the contract said that at so many kids, they had to hire me help, like starting part-time, then going full-time. And we started plowing in, and all of a sudden, all kinds of kids came. And it made a bunch of changes in the church. They had pews. This church had pews. Well, in about a year, they didn't have pews anymore because we had so many kids. We didn't have the room for them, so we had to get rid of the pews. And boy, you should have seen some of the old ladies clutching their pearls in that one. Oh, the pews! Oh, I'm sad. You know, like the pews are holy or something. Pews are just a long bench, you know. But you would have thought they were, you know, so take them home, put them in your garage. But the youth group got growing, and so by that time we hired an assistant guy, Mike Wellman, who you'll see down here, a long-haired guy, with white hair, playing pickleball. He became my assistant, and we were just about 4 or 5 kids from him going full-time. When the pastor of the church comes to me, I'm on the copy machine, and he says, so I've come to realize why the adult part of the church isn't growing as exponentially as the youth. I thought, thank God you realize that just the piano, organ, hymnal stuff isn't really working so well. Or maybe that we have to take no-dos to get through his sermons, you know. But that wasn't it. He goes, there's too many youth. I went, what? What? He goes, too many youth. We've overemphasized the youth, so I'm going to ask for your and Mike's resignation, which I thought was totally insane. And so I asked him, hey, let's talk about it. Let me help you with the adult part, da-da-da-da-da. But he went home, called the board, and the next thing you know, we got fired because we said we wouldn't resign, so we got fired. And so we didn't want to start a church because we were just youth guys. We were just youth schmucks, you know. And we didn't want to have to deal with all the problems that adults have and families have. They can deal with those. We just wanted to work where we were really comfortable. But God had other ideas because we were looking around going, look at all these little churches. I bet maybe they'd want us. And so I remember Mike and I sitting across the desk from some of the pastors and going, listen, here's the situation. We've got 100 and something youth, teenagers, about 85% from non-Christian backgrounds. We really need a church family. Would you be our church family? And I remember still pastor leans across the desk and goes, don't you dare come here. Okay, I guess that's a no, you know. And so we were sitting around in my living room, and we said, crap. Maybe somebody said something worse than that, but I just said crap. And we have to start a church. We don't have any choice. We have to start a church. And that's how Quiet Christian Fellowship, we were in a storefront. Nobody got paid. And the thing just took off because all the kids came, and then surprise, surprise, they brought their parents. And we got to rethink how we did church from the ground up because we were making it up as we went. We we just refer to as pulling all the chemicals out from under the sink and then just start mixing them together and see what explodes, you know. And what exploded is a lot of what you see here right now. So my background is that, and so I've been with these guys from the beginning with a whole team of us, really crazy people. Some of them should have been in jail. Some of them actually were in jail for a while before they got saved. But it's been a really, really fun ride. So that's a bit of my story. Get a chance to tell everybody at once without having to sit and tell everybody my story 10 different times. And if you have any questions about that, you're more than welcome to ask. And I'm going to give you guys a break, and about a 10-minute break, and then I'm going to turn you over to this fine lady in the back called Jungle Jen. All right? So take a break, go to the bathroom, get some